Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
From the moment the story of how wealthy and powerful global figures were using highly secretive Panamanian tax shelters was revealed, David Cameron has faced some of the most difficult and potentially damaging questions about his personal affairs that he has had to face since he came to power. For 4 days, we've known that his late father, Ian, had set up an offshore investment company in the tax haven of the Bahamas. What the Prime Minister revealed to our political editor, Robert Peston, is that he did, until 6 years ago, have a stake in his father's offshore company worth £30,000. The Prime Minister said he was keen to clarify his own position and that other potential Prime Ministers should do the same. And Mr. Cameron was also keen to defend his father's reputation, a man he said who I love and admire, miss every day, and whose name he didn't want to see dragged through the mud.
A Prime Minister in Exeter this morning. His mission to persuade students they should vote to keep Britain in the EU. But keeping his famous cool has been harder than usual in a week when his beloved late father has been accused of being a tax avoider and he's been charged with reaping the financial benefits.
I did own stocks and shares in the past. I sold them all in 2010 because I wanted, if I was going to become Prime Minister, I don't want anyone to say you've got other agendas or vested interests or all the rest of it. And I did. Samantha and I had a joint account and we owned 5,000 units in Blairmore Investment Trust, which we sold in January 2010. That was worth something like £30,000.
Was there a profit on it?
I'd paid income tax on the dividends, but there was a profit on it, but it was less than the capital gains tax allowance, so I didn't pay capital gains tax, but it was subject to all the UK taxes in all the normal ways.
Now, Blairmore is a fund or unit trust that invests in overseas shares. It was incorporated by David Cameron's father, Ian, in Panama in 1982. And because it was incorporated in the secretive tax haven and operated in the Bahamas, it didn't pay tax on its profits. And that's why the Prime Minister's connection to it is so controversial. But David Cameron insisted the £21 million fund went to Panama for reasons other than avoiding tax.
It was set up after exchange controls went so that people who wanted to invest in dollar-denominated shares and companies could do so. And there are thousands of other unit trusts set up in this way. It was reported to the HMRC, the Inland Revenue. It reported itself every year. It was properly audited.
So I'm sorry to press you on this, but part of your dad's estate was in Jersey when he died. Did you benefit from that?
No, he left me some money, very generously, quite a lot of money, and I've been able to
Can you tell us how much?
That. I think it was published at the time. It was £300,000. It was published at the time, as these things are. I obviously can't, point to every source of every bit of the money, and Dad's not around for me to ask the questions now.
But therefore, actually, you can't be certain that some of that 300,000 didn't come from offshore sources, presumably.
Well, he had investments in Blairmore Investment Trust.
And money in Jersey.
That was because of another unit trust, again, established to industry standard and all the rest of it. I'm proud of my dad and what he did and the business he established and all the rest of it. I can't bear to see his name being dragged through the mud, as you can see. And for my own, I chose to take a different path from my father, grandfather and great-grandfather, who were all stockbrokers.
Do you think senior politicians should be completely transparent about their earnings and assets?
I think the idea of, as I said before the last section, the idea of publishing the information that goes in your tax return, I'm very relaxed about that. Prime Minister, potential Prime Minister,
yeah.
I'm very happy for that to happen.
Of course, it won't be you next.
Well, no, except for I'm happy to, get on and do that now. Whether we do it, every year or starting now or going back a couple of years, whatever. I'm very happy with that. I've never hidden the fact that I'm a very lucky person. I had wealthy parents who gave me a great upbringing, who paid for me to go to an amazing school. I've never tried to pretend to be anything I'm not.
Well, it's taken several days for the Prime Minister to clarify his position. On Monday, Downing Street insisted it was a private matter whether or not the Cameron family had funds in offshore investments. The next day, Mr. Cameron declared, "I own no shares, no offshore trusts, no offshore funds." Later, the same day, Downing Street went further, adding, "The Prime Minister, his wife and their children do not benefit from any offshore funds." And yesterday, his spokesman said there are no offshore funds, trusts, which the PM, Mrs. Cameron, or their children will benefit from in the future. Well, Robert joins me in the studio now. It's taken 4 long days for the Prime Minister to actually reach this point in addressing these key questions you're asking him.
Yes, I think it's easy to forget, when we think of all those slick spin professionals, that politics is fundamentally about people. And I think a couple of the reasons why it's taken so long to find out more of the truth about what went on, for reasons that most people, I think, will have some sympathy with. I mean, you know, if I think about, do I know the finances of my own dad? The answer is no, I know almost nothing about it, and most of us don't. So it will have taken him a while to actually get to the bottom of this. But also, and I think, you know, you'll have seen that from the little film we just showed, there's no doubt in my mind that he reveres his late father.
That's clear. That came through.
Him. And I think when the world is ganging up to beat up his dead father, his initial reaction is sort of bugger off. You know, basically, you're all wrong. I know my dad's a hero. So I just think it's taken him a bit of time to get to the bottom of all this. But I think there's another point as well, which is this is a government which is seriously stretched at the moment. I mean, let's be clear, this battle by David Cameron to win this EU referendum is occupying him day and night, and really important decisions and issues are not getting the attention they deserve. So a climate of mistrust has been created, and of course that's wonderful for the opposition Labour Party. And I think we'll now hear a little bit from Tom Watson, making hay for Labour from this bit of rain for the Prime Minister.
Well, tonight he said he'll publish his tax return. That's fine, but that won't show what shareholdings and investments he had. And I think people would want to know what they were now. After all, he was prepared to allow his money to be invested into these very complex schemes that most people regard as vehicles to avoid paying tax. Were there any others? And until we see that, I don't think this scandal is going away.
Which leads to the question, does this draw a line under this for David Cameron?
Well, there have been a whole series of accidents for the government recently. You'll remember the humiliating climb down on cuts they wanted to make to disability benefits. Right now, it's engaged in a serious crisis over whether to save the Port Talbot steel plant, having, frankly, been way behind the curve in recognising that the plant was likely to be closed down. We are, I think, can't be confident that actually this is the end of the crisis, the personal crisis over the tax affairs of David Cameron's family. Why? Again, it all comes down to Europe. As I said earlier, this is a government deeply stretched by the battle over whether to stay in or leave the European Union. And let's remember, we've got 2.5 months or so left of this. A lot more could go wrong for the Prime Minister.
It certainly could. Robert, thank you very much for that and for the interview.
I've been getting away with it all my